preface to the reader. To all, students of the chemical art, especially the genuine sons of Hermes, the author wishes health and blessing from God. If you will, with me, consider candidly, reader, many spurious books, false recipes, as the alchemists call them, composed by the fraud and greed of impostors, in which not even a spark of truth shines. Among those who investigate the natural and hidden arts, among whom very many have been deceived and are still deceived, I considered it would be nothing more beneficial than if I were to offer AIJ, then by the Father of Lights to me conferred, with his children heirs of knowledge to share in common, so that in succession I might pass it on, not only to former centuries, but also to our own, to make that philosophical blessing of God more illustrious, which has not been denied to certain individuals. For certain reasons it seemed advisable not to publish my name, since I seek not for praise, but strive to benefit lovers of philosophy. Therefore I leave vain desire for glory to others, who prefer to seem than to be. What follows is a clear testimony of philosophical skill, briefly comprehended, drawn from manual experience granted to me by the Most High, so that those who in this most praised science have laid the first and real foundations may not forsake the exercise of the most beautiful things, and thus may be safe from the wicked and most shameless crowd, which delights in deceiving. These are not dreams, as the common herd speaks, nor the ravings of foolish men's imaginations, as many ignorant ones reveal the art, the very truth of philosophy itself, which, as a lover of truth, for the elevation and confirmation of chemical truth, I ought not, nor could I, conceal or veil in silence, although in these evil times, where virtue and vice are equated, because of the wickedness and ingratitude of men, aging ingratitude and unfaithfulness, not to mention the curses of philosophers, should greatly fear to come into public view, I could present witnesses to this chemical truth, namely the most esteemed authors, in accordance with the unanimous agreement of venerable antiquity in so many diverse nations. But what seems evident to the eye does not require proof. That seems to disappear without a trace. In recent years, speaking frankly, many men of the highest and lowest ranks have engaged in this, and although there are some charlatans who, out of envy, malice, or fear of detection of their impostures, proclaim that their soul can be extracted from gold and their body restored by the deceptive sound of another, not without the loss and detriment of time, labor, and expenses. Let the sons of Hermes know for certain that such claims, whether about extracting souls from gold or from the moon, as is commonly asserted in alchemical lore, are mere persuasion, which many do not believe, but are ultimately verified by experience, the one and only teacher of truth. On the contrary, whoever, in the light of philosophy, can perform this without fraud or deception, or can truly transmute even the least metal, whether with profit or without profit, by the real cultivation of the sun or the moon, with all the necessary tests being satisfied, I can rightly affirm that such a person has the means. I edge to the openness of the future, and to the investigation of deeper and higher mysteries, and with the blessing of God to be acquired. Furthermore, I offer these present treatises, written with the goal of experience, to the sons of knowledge, so that while they engage in investigating the hidden operations of nature with all thought, movement, and spirit, they may thereby perceive and know the true truth, and nature herself, in which matter alone, the perfection of the whole most sacred philosophical art consists, as long as the royal way, which nature prescribes in all operations, is observed. Therefore, I would like to advise the candid reader here to understand my writings not so much from the shell of words, but from the depths of nature, and later lament the time, labor, and expense spent in vain. Let him consider this to be the science of the wise, not of the ignorant, and far different is the sense of the philosophers than that perceived by proud despots or wretched scholars, or, against their conscience, by the vicious, who, unable to emerge by virtues, strive through wickedness and slanders against their good fortune, or the ignorance of those from abroad, who, with their whitewashings and redactions, have deceived the entire world with the most unworthy defamation of the praised science of chemistry. Men of wisdom will never admit such profanity into their inner sanctum, for it is God's gift if, to that, only by the grace of God illuminating the understanding, through patient and religious humility can be attained, either through the demonstrative instruction of an experienced teacher or through the direct experience of the eyes. Therefore, it rightfully drives away those who are alien to it from its secrets. As for the rest, I ask the sons of this art to accept the study of mine about them purely, with a grateful mind, and when they have made the hidden manifest, and, by the divine will, have steadfastly labored to the desired philosophical haven, may they, in the philosophical manner, exclude all unworthy ones from this art, and, with love towards their neighbor and fear of God, setting aside vain ostentation, may they remember, in gratitude, to sing eternal praises to the best and greatest for this special gift, rejoicing in silent hearts without abuse. The simplicity of truth is the seal. 12 treatises on the Philosopher's Stone, by me, who love the lineage of the divine Lecius. First treatise on nature, what it is, and what kind of investigators should be of it. Many wise men, and most learned individuals before many centuries, indeed even the Hermetists before the flood, wrote many things about the making of the Philosopher's Stone, and left so many writings to us, that unless nature worked credibly for us day by day, we would scarcely ever believe nature to be true, because in previous centuries there were not so many inventors of things, nor even our predecessors considered anything other than nature itself, and the possibility of nature. And although they manifested the way into the simplicity of nature, nevertheless they found things which we, now engaged in so many matters, could scarcely imagine with our own intellects. This is because to us nature, and the generation of things in the world, now seem cheap and simple, and therefore our intellects are not directed towards things known, but towards such things which cannot, or can scarcely, come into being. Wherefore it also happens to us to devise subtle things more easily, and as it were, to be able to imagine them ourselves, than to attain to the true course of nature, and the sense of the philosophers, and thus the disposition of human nature is such, that it neglects what it knows, and always seeks other things, much more so human intellects, to which nature is subjected. For example, you see any artisan, when he has already reached the highest perfection of his craft, seeking other things, or abusing that which he has, or simply ceasing. So also noble nature always acts, until even to that point, that is, the ultimate limit. Afterwards, it ceases. For a certain promise was given to nature from the beginning, that through the entire course it could come to better things, and have complete rest, to which all tends with its little effort, and rejoices in its own end, no differently than the ant in old age, to which nature creates wings. So indeed also our intellects have progressed to that point, especially in the philosophical art, or the practice of the stone, that we have now almost come to that very limit. For the art of alchemy has discovered such subtleties now, that scarcely greater ones could be found, and it differs so far from the art of the ancient philosophers, just as the clockmaker differs from the simple blacksmith. And although both work with iron, neither would know the labors of the other, even though both are masters in their own art. If today the father of the philosophers, Hermes himself, were to be revived, and the subtle intellect of Geber, with him the profound Raymond Lulio, are not considered as philosophers, but rather as disciples by our chemists, they would not recognize so many distillations used today, so many circulations, so many calcinations, and so many other countless works of the artists, which men of this century have found and devised from their writings. The only thing lacking for us is to know that which they have separated, namely the philosopher's stone or the physical tincture. While we seek it, we find other things, and the usual procreation of humankind is initiated, and nature holds its right in it, now hardly deviating. But to return to the point, I have promised in this first treatise. Thus, I say that nature is one, true, simple, and whole in itself, which God made before the ages, and enclosed his spirit within it. Know, however, that the end of nature is God, who is also the beginning of nature, since no end is defined except in him, in whom it begins. I have said that there is only one through which God makes all things, not because God could not operate without it, since he himself made nature and is all-powerful, but it pleased him, and he made it so. All things come from that one nature, and there is nothing in the world outside of nature. And although sometimes abortions occur, this is not nature, but either of the craftsman or of the place. This nature is divided into 4 places, in which it operates all things, which appear and are in shadow, since things are more in shadow than they truly appear. It changes in the sea and in the female, and is assimilated to Mercury, which joins itself in various places, and according to the good or bad places of the earth, it produces things, although there are no bad places on earth, as it appears to us. However, there are only 4 qualities, and these are inherent in all things, and they do not always agree. One always exceeds the other. But nature is not visible, although it acts visibly, for it is volatile in spirit, which performs its function in bodies, its place and seat being its own. Be in the divine will. For us in this place, it serves no other purpose than for us to know its places, which are more suitable or closer to itself, that is, so that we know how to join one thing to another according to nature, lest wood be mixed with man, or an ox or an animal with metal, but that each thing acts on its own kind, and then nature will certainly perform its duty. The place of nature is no other than, as mentioned above, in the will of God. Investigators of nature should be such as nature itself, truthful, simple, patient, steadfast, etc., and most importantly, pious, fearing God, not harming their neighbor. Then they should carefully consider whether their purpose agrees with nature, whether it is possible, learn from apparent examples, from which things are made, how, and in what vessel nature operates. For if you simply wish to do something, as nature itself does, follow nature. But if you aspire to something greater than nature, observe in what way and by what means it is improved, and let it always be done in a similar manner. For example, if you desire to promote metal, which is our intention, further than nature has done in power, you must take Metalka into account, and this in the sea and the female. Otherwise, you will not achieve it. For if you intend to create metal from herbs, you will labor in vain, just as you will not produce wood from a dog or an animal. Bej, second treatise, on the operation of nature and our purpose, and seed. I have already said that nature is true, unique, apparent everywhere, continuous, which is known from produced things, namely woods, herbs, etc. I have also said that the investigator of nature should be truthful, simple, patient, steadfast, applying his mind at least to one thing, etc. Now about the act of nature beginning. Just as nature is in the will of God, and God created it, or imposed it on every imagination, so nature made for itself a seed, that is, its will in the elements, that is indeed one. And yet it brings forth various things, but nothing operates without seed. Whatever the seed desires, nature operates, for it is like some tool of an artisan. Therefore, the seed of each thing is better and more useful to the artisan than nature itself. For from nature without seed you will produce only as much as without fire, gold or silver the goldsmith, or without grain and seed the farmer. Having the seed, nature will be present, whether for evil or for good. It operates in the seed as God in the free will of man, and this is a great miracle, that nature obeys the seed, not coerced, but for spontaneously, just as God grants all things, which man desires, not coerced, but from his own will. Therefore he gave man free will, whether for evil or for good. Thus, the seed is the elixir of each thing, or the quintessence, or the most perfect digestion and concoction of a thing, or the balm of sulfur, which is the same as the radical moisture in metals. Indeed, a great deal could be said about this seed, but we only aim at our purpose in the art of alchemy. The four elements generate the seed, by the will of God and the imagination of nature. For, indeed, some men have the seed of the center, or vessel of their females in the kidneys. Thus the four elements, by an indefinite motion, each according to its quality, project the seed into the center of the earth, where it is digested and emitted through motion afterwards. But the center of the earth is a certain empty place, where nothing can rest. In the X-center, if I may speak so, or on the edge and circumference of the center, the four elements project their qualities. Just as a man emits his semen into the womb of a woman, in which nothing remains of the seed, but after receiving its due portion from the matrix, the rest is expelled outward. Similarly, at the center of the earth, it happens that the magnetic force of a certain part of a place attracts something towards itself, suitable for bringing forth, but the rest is expelled outward, into stones, beige, and other excretions. For all things have their origin from this source, and nothing in the whole world is born, except through this source. For example, let there be on some flat table a vessel of water, which is placed in the middle of the table, and various things and various colors are placed around it, also salt, etc., which is poured out separately afterwards. The water will be seen to spread out from here and there, and while a little stream touches the red color, it will become red from it if it touches the salt. It will acquire the taste of salt, and so on with the rest. For the water does not change places, but the diversity of places changes the water. Similarly, From the center of the earth, the seed or semen, projected by the four elements into the center, passes to various places, and according to the nature of the place, things are natured. If it reaches a place of pure earth and water, the thing becomes pure. The seed and semen of all things is one, and yet it generates various things, as appears from the following example. The seed of man is noble seed, and at least for the generation of man it is created. Certainly, if a man abuses it, which is within his free will, an abortion is born. For, if contrary to the most serious injunctions of God, a man were to mate with a cow or another fit to mate with him, through such inhuman and detestable mixing of the virtues with animals, various beasts similar to humans would be produced. For, indeed, if semen enters the center, what was supposed to be born from there is born, but when it already comes into a place and conceives, it no longer changes its form. But indeed, while still in the center, the semen can easily be produced from that semen, a tree rather than metal, a herb as quickly as a stone, and one more precious than the other, according to the purity or impurity of the place. But how the elements generate semen must now be told to us, and it is done in this way. There are four elements, 2 are heavy and 2 are light, 2 are dry and 2 are wet, but one is most dry and the other most wet, are masculine and feminine, etc. Each of these is most ready by itself to produce things similar to itself in its sphere, and so was willed by the Most High. These 4 do not rest, but always act on each other, and each emits its subtle essence, and they meet in the center. But in the center is the Archus, the servant of nature, who by mixing these seeds expels them outward, but how this is done is seen more fully in the epilogue of these 12 treatises. Third treatise, on the true prima materia of metals. The primary material of metals is twofold, but one without the other does not create metal. The first in principle is the moisture mixed with the warmth of air, which the philosophers have called mercury, which is governed by the rays of the sun and moon in the philosophical sea. The second is the dry heat of earth, which they called sulfur. But because all true philosophers have mostly concealed this, we will explain it a little more clearly, especially the weight, which, when unknown, destroys everything. Hence it happens that many produce abortions from a good thing. For there are those who take the whole body as the material or seed, or semen, others take a piece, and all these deviate from the right path. For example, if someone were to take the foot of a man and the hand of a woman, and wanted to create a human from this mixture, it would not be possible. For there is a center in every body, and a point or place for the feminine or sperm, and always the 8,200th part, even in the very grain of wheat. And this cannot be otherwise, for not the whole grain or body is turned into seed, but there is only some necessary spark in the body, which is guarded by its body, from all excessive heat and cold, etc. If you have ears and senses, observe this and you will be safe, not only from those who are ignorant of the place of sperm, and strive to reduce the whole grain into seed, but also from all those who are involved in the solution of metals, and want to dissolve metals completely throughout, so that afterward from their mutual mixture, they may create a new metal. But these, if they considered the process of nature, would see that the matter is quite different, for no metal is so pure that it does not have its impurities, some more or fewer than others. But you, dear reader, first observe the point of nature, as mentioned above, and you have enough, but have this caution for yourself, not to seek this point in common metals, where it is not. For these metals, especially the common gold, are dead, but ours are alive, having spirit, which must be entirely taken into account. For I know that the life of metals is fire, while they are still in their minds, and their death also is fire, namely, by blowing. The first material of metals is indeed a certain humidity mixed with warm air, and it is in the form of a greasy water adhering to every pure or impure thing, more abundantly in one place than in another, which happens because the earth is more open and porous in one place, having an attractive force, than in another. Sometimes it emerges by itself into light, clothed with some garment, especially in places where it has no opportunity to adhere to anything. Thus it is recognized that everything is composed of 3 principles, but in the material itself, only one matter of metals, without any conjunction, except for the garment or its shadow, namely sulfur, etc. Fourth treatise. How metals are generated in the bowels of the earth. Metals are produced in this way, after the 4 elements project their powers into the center of the earth, the archeus, by distilling, sublimates the heat of perpetual motion onto the surface of the earth, for the earth is porous, and by the wind distilling through the pores of the earth, it is dissolved into water, from which all things are born. Therefore, let the sons of doctrine understand that the sperm of metals is no different from the sperm of other substances, namely humid vapor. Therefore, craftsmen vainly seek the reduction of metals into prime matter, which is only vapor. The philosophers did not understand prime matter in such a way, but only secondary matter, as Bernard of Treviso argues excellently, although not so clearly, because he speaks of the four elements. He nevertheless wanted to say it, and only spoke with the sons. However, I, to elucidate the theory more clearly, wanted to caution and warn everyone here that so many solutions, so many circulations, so many calcinations and repetitions are inherent. For in vain is sought in a hard thing. When it is soft everywhere by itself, let only the second matter be sought, namely that which, once begun, cannot be changed into another form. But if you ask how metal can be reduced to such matter, I follow the intention of the philosophers in this. I only want this above all for the sons of art to understand the meaning of the writers, not the syllables, and where nature ends, namely in metallics before our perfected eyes, where art should begin. But to return to the point, since our intention here is not solely about the stone, let us now discuss the matter of metals. I said a little earlier, all things are born from liquid air or vapor, which the elements continually distill into the bowels of the earth. After the archeus of nature receives this, it sublimates it through the pores, and assigns to each place its own capacity, as we have mentioned in the preceding, and thus, by the variety of places, various things also arise and are born. Some think that Saturn has a different seed, and likewise gold is sought in a hard thing, when by itself it is soft everywhere. Not the first, but only the second matter should be sought, namely that which, once begun, cannot be changed into another form. But if you ask how metal can be reduced to such matter, I follow there in the intention of the philosophers. This only I desire above all, that the disciples of art understand the sense of the writings, not the syllables, and where nature ends, namely in metals before our perfected bodies, where art should begin. But to return to the point, since our intention here is not solely about the stone, let us now discuss the matter of metals. I said a little earlier, all things are born from liquid air or vapor, which the elements continually distill into the bowels of the earth. After the archeus of nature receives this, it sublimates it through the pores, and assigns to each place its own capacity, as we have mentioned in the preceding, and thus, by the variety of places, various things also arise and are born. Some think that Saturn has a different seed, and likewise gold, and so consequently, the rest of the metals, but these are vain. There is only one seed. The same is found in Saturn, as in gold, likewise in the moon, as in Mars, etc. But the location of the earth was different, if you do not rightly understand. Although in the moon nature departs more quickly than in the sun, and so with others. For when from the earth Cij, the vapor is sublimated from the center of the earth, passing through places either dry or hot. Therefore, if the vapor passes through hot and pure places, where the richness of sulfur adheres, that vapor, which the philosophers have called mercury of the philosophers, adapts itself and joins that richness, which it later sublimates along with itself. And then viscosity is formed. With the name of vapor being left behind, it takes on the name of richness, which later, as it comes by sublimation to other places, which the preceding vapor has already purified, where there is fine, pure, and moist earth, it fills its pores and joins with it, and here the sun is formed. But if that richness comes to impure, cold places, Saturn is formed, but if such pure earth is mixed with sulfur, Venus is formed, and so on. For the more purified the place is, the more beautiful metals return. For it must be known that the vapor continually exits from the center to the surface, purifying the places as it goes. Hence it happens that today mines are found in places where there were none 1,000 years ago. For in its progress, it always refines, drawing along with it raw, impure matter little by little. And this is the repetition and circulation of nature, as long as it is sublimated, producing new things, until the place is optimally purified. And the more it is purified, the more noble things it produces. But in winter, when the cold air constricts the earth, even that more viscous vapor is frozen, which later reverently, it is mixed with earth and water, and magnesia is formed, attracting to itself similar mercury of the air, which gives life to all things, through the rays of the sun, moon, and stars, and thus it produces grass, flowers, and the like. for nature does not waste a moment of time. But metals are thus generated, the earth is purified by long distillation, and then by the access of richness they are generated. They do not come forth in any other way, as is the vain opinion of some philosophers' writings interpreted by rash interpreters. Fifth treatise, on the generation of stones of all kinds, the matter of stones, is the same as that of other things, and they are thus born according to the purity of the places. When the four elements distill their vapor into the center of the earth, and the arcus of nature ejects and sublimates it here, as it passes through places and draws along with it all the impurity of the earth into the surface, which the air later freezes. For what pure air creates, raw air freezes, because air has ingress into air, and they join together, for nature rejoices in nature, and thus stones and rocky mountains are made, according to the large and small pores, and the larger the earth's pores, the better the stones are also. Ch. The place is purified, for when by such respiration the major heat, and the major quantity of water draw, so much the faster is the earth purified, and thus afterwards in such places metals are more readily born, as experience itself testifies, such as gold is not sought or found elsewhere than in mountains, which in the plain, unless rarely, cannot be made, for often such places are humid, not with vapor but with elemental water, which attracts the vapor to itself, and thus embraces it, so that they are not easily separated. Afterwards the sun of the sky, separating it, makes the clay fatty, which potters use, but in places where there is coarse sand, and vapor does not have with it fat or sulfur. Herbs and grass are created in meadows. There are also other precious stones, such as diamonds, rubies, emeralds, and other gems. All are generated in this way, when the vapor of nature is sublimated by itself, without the access of fats, sulfur, and comes to a place of pure salt water. Diamonds are made, and this in the coldest places, to which fat cannot come, because fat would not allow it in this way. For it must be understood that the spirit of water is easily sublimated by easy heat, but oil or fat is not elevated except by great heat, and in warm places. For even if it proceeds from the center, it is lightly frozen by cold, and thus subsists the vapor, but ascends to the appropriate places, and freezes in pure water into granular stones. However, how colors are made in gems, it is to be understood. It happens by means of sulfur in this way. If the fatness of sulfur freezes by that perpetual motion, afterward the spirit of water is poured over and purifies it by the power of salt until, with the color digested, it is colored red or white, which color tends towards the better with that spirit because it is subtle. Raised with the spirit by so many repeated distillations, the spirit then has the power to enter imperfect things, and thus introduces color, which afterward joins with that water now partly frozen, and thus fills its pores, and is fixed with inseparable drying. For all water is frozen by heat. If it lacks spirit, it is frozen by cold if it has spirit. But he who knows how to freeze water with heat, and to join the spirit with it, will certainly find a thing 1,000 times more precious than gold, and than any other thing. Thus it brings it about that the spirit is separated from the water, so that it may putrefy, and the grain may appear, afterward rejecting the dregs. It brings the spirit back from on high into the water, and makes them join together. For that joining together will generate a branch dissimilar in form to the parents. Sixth treatise, on the second matter, and the putrefaction of things. We have spoken about the first matter of things, and how things are born from nature or seed, that is, how nature receives matter from the elements from which it generates seed. Now, however, let us speak about seed, and things generated from seed. Everything having seed multiplies in it, but without the assistance of nature, it does not come to be. For seed is nothing other than air frozen in some body, or humid vapor, and unless this is resolved by warm vapor, it is of no use. Therefore, let investigators of the art know what seed is, so that they do not seek a thing that is not, and let them know that it is triple, which is produced from the four elements. The first is mineral, about which we are speaking here. The second is vegetable. The third is animal. Mineral seed is known by the philosophers. Vegetable is common and vulgar, as we see in fruits. Animal is known through imagination. Vegetable shows us how nature creates it from the four elements. For it must be understood that winter is the cause of putrefaction, since the vital spirits in the trees freeze, and when they are dissolved by the heat of the sun, in which is the magnetic force attracting all humidity, then the heat of nature, excited by motion, drives the subtle vapor of water to the circumference, which the pores of the tree opening up and causes drops to trickle, always separating the pure from the impure. Sometimes, however, the pure precedes the impure. It gives and congeals into flowers. The impure goes into the leaves, thick and dense, into the bark, fixing itself on the bark of the tree. The leaves fall due to cold or heat. When its pores are obstructed, the flowers congeal in such a color as is the heat itself, and brings forth fruit or seed, like an apple, in which the seed is, from which a tree does not grow, but in that seed is the seed or grain intrinsically, from which even without seed a tree is born. For multiplication occurs not in the seed, but in the seed. Thus, we see nature create from the four elements a womb, so that we do not occupy ourselves in vain, for what is created does not need a creator. Let this example suffice to admonish the reader, but I return to the mineral purpose. The mineral seed or seeds of metals nature calls forth in the bowels of the earth. Therefore, such seed is not believed to be in the nature of things, because it is invisible. But it is not surprising that the ignorant doubt, since that which is before their eyes is not perceived by them, much less that which is invisibly hidden. But it is most true that what is above is not unless it is that which is below, and vice versa. That which is born above is born from the same source as that which is to be other than the seed of metals, and it is rightly to be concluded that nothing grows without seed. Where there is no seed, the thing is dead. It is necessary, therefore, that either the four elements create the seed of metals or produce them without seed. If they are produced without seed, then they cannot become perfect. Clearly, everything without seed is imperfect by the reason of composition. Whoever does not give faith to this undoubted. Truth is not worthy to scrutinize the secrets of nature, for nothing is born in the world that is devoid of seed. The seed of metals is truly and actually inherent in them. Its generation occurs as follows. The four elements in the first operation of nature distill through the arcus of nature into the center of the earth, the heavy vapor of water, which is the seed of metals, and is called mercury because of its fluidity, and it is assimilated to sulfur due to its internal heat, and after coagulation, it is radical moisture. And although the body of metals is generated from mercury, which should be understood from the mercury of the philosophers, yet those should not be listened to who think mercury D as the seed of metals of the common people, and thus they accept the body in place of the seed, not considering that even the so-called mercury of the common people contains its own seed within itself. The errors of all these will be evident from the following example. It is evident that humans have seed, in which they multiply. The body of man is mercury, but the seed is hidden in the body, and by reason of the body, the quantity is small in weight. Therefore, whoever wishes to generate a human, not mercury, which is the body, but the seed, the vapor of water, is to be taken. Thus, in the regeneration of metals, the vulgar chemists proceed inherently. They dissolve metallic bodies, whether mercury or gold or Saturn or the moon, and corrode them with strong waters and other heterogeneous substances not required for the true art. Then they join and cook them together, not knowing that from a dissected human body, a human is not generated, because the corruption of the body and the destruction of the seed proceeded in this way. Each thing multiplies in male and female, as I mentioned in the treatise on the dual matter. The division of sex creates or produces nothing, but the due conjunction of it brings forth a new form. Therefore, seeds or spermata should not be understood as bodies. Therefore, a living male and a living female join these together so that they may imagine sperm between themselves. To proceed dies its own nature's fruit. The first matter, indeed, no mortal believes they can make. The first matter of man is earth, and no man can create a man from it. Only God knows this. But the second matter, which is already created, if placed in the proper place, will easily be generated by nature's operation, that of which it is the seed. The craftsman here does nothing unless he knows how to separate the subtle from the dense, and to place it in the appropriate vessel, for it must be considered that as a thing begins, so it ends. From one, there are two, from two, one, and not further. Venus is God. From this one, God the flow is born. One gave two, two gave one, and from this Saturn's spirit is born, or the moons, and corrode them with strong waters, and other heterogeneous substances, not required for the true art. Then they join and cook them together, not knowing that from a dissected human body, a human is not generated, because the corruption of the body, and the destruction of the seed proceeded in this way. Each thing multiplies in male and female, as I mentioned in the treatise on the dual matter. The division of sex creates or produces nothing, but the due conjunction of it brings forth a new form. Therefore, seeds or sperm must not be taken as bodies. Therefore, a living male and a living female join these together so that they may imagine sperm between themselves, for the purpose of proceeding, emanating from both. Thus the world was made, and thus will be its end. Consider the first four elements most purely. You have in them the Father, Father and Son, the last Holy Spirit. You have in them the four elements. You have the four luminaries, two celestial and two terrestrial. Nothing more is, was, or will be than what is evident in this figure. If I were to explain all the mysteries that could be elucidated from here, a great volume would arise. I return to the point, and I tell you the truth, my son. Not one is created from one, because this is the sole property of God alone. It is enough for you to be able to create one useful thing from two. Therefore, know that sperm is a multiplicative second matter, and not the first. For the first matter seems invisible. It is hidden in nature or in the elements. But the second sometimes appears to the children of doctrine. Diage, Treatise 7, on the power of the second matter, so that you may better comprehend what this second material is, the virtues from which you will recognize it, I will describe to you. And first know that nature is divided into three kingdoms. Two are kingdoms, each of which can stand by itself, even if the other two are not. There is a kingdom mineral, vegetable, and animal. The mineral can exist by itself, even if no humans existed in the world, nor any tree or plant. The vegetable likewise, even if there were no metal or animal, can stand by itself. These two are created from one through one. But the third, from the said two, has life, without which it cannot exist, and is nobler and more excellent than the two aforesaid, just as the last is among them and dominates them, because always in the third virtue ends, and in the second it multiplies. You see in the vegetable kingdom, the first matter is herb or tree, which you cannot create yourself. Nature alone does this. In this kingdom, the second diaj, the matter is the seed, which you see in this herb or tree multiplies. In the animal kingdom, the first matter is beast or man, whom you cannot create, but the second matter, or the sperm, in which man multiplies. In the mineral kingdom, you cannot create metal, and if you boast, you are vain and lying. Nature has done this, and although you have the first matter according to the philosophers, that central salt without gold would still be impossible for you to multiply. However, only the sons of doctrine know the seed of metals. In plants, seeds appear outside. The kidneys of its digestion are warm air. In animals, the seed appears inside and outside. The kidneys, the receptacle of vegetable seed, is the earth. The receptacle of animal seed is the womb of the female. The receptacle of mineral seed is air, and these are the receptacles of seeds, which are the congelations of bodies. That is digestion, which is solution. That putrefaction, which is destruction. But the virtue of each seed is to join itself to each thing in its own kingdom, because it is subtle, and nothing but air, which is congealed by humidity and water. It is thus known because it does not mix itself outside its natural kingdom with anyone. The subject matter doesn't dissolve but congeals, as it doesn't require dissolution but congelation. Therefore, it's necessary for the pores of the body to open so that the seed may be emitted, in whose center lies the seed, which is air, when it comes into the proper matrix. It congeals and congeals what it finds, whether pure or impure, mixed with purity. As long as a seed is in the body lives. When it's entirely consumed, the body dies, and all bodies become weakened after the emission of the seed. Experience also testifies that people who excessively indulge in Venus become weaker, just as trees bearing excessive fruit become sterile later on. Therefore, as has been repeated many times, the seed is an invisible matter. But the seed is visible, and it's almost like a living soul. It's not found in dead things. Therefore, it selects in two ways, gently and violently. But because here the discussion is at least about its power, I say that nothing is born without a female. Everything is by the power of the seed. And the sons of art are made in vain to seek seed in cut down trees, which is only found in green ones. Treatise 8, on art, and how nature works through art in the seed. By itself is of no importance, unless it is placed, either by art or by nature, into the proper matrix. And although the seed itself is nobler than any creature, its matrix is life, which causes the seed or grain to putrefy and the pure point of it to congeal. Moreover, by the heat of its own body, it nourishes it and causes it to grow. And this happens in all the aforementioned three kingdoms of nature, and happens naturally through months, years, and seasons. However, that skilled art is the one that can abbreviate something in the mineral and vegetable kingdoms, but not in the animal. It accomplishes this only in the mineral, which nature cannot do because of the raw air, which by its violence fills the pores of each body, not in the bowels, but on the surface of the earth, as I have said before in the preceding chapters. But to make this easier to understand, I also wanted to add that the elements certainly project among themselves into the center of the earth, as if into their own kings. But the center emits it into the matrix through motion, and the matrices are countless, as many places, so many matrices, one purer than the other, and so on infinitely. Therefore, know that a pure matrix will give birth to something pure in its likeness. For example, in animals, there are matrices of humans, cows, horses, dogs, etc. So in the mineral and vegetable kingdoms, there are metals, stones, salts. For salts in these two kingdoms are to be considered, and their places, according to more or less. Chapter 9. On the mixture of metals, or on eliciting metallic seed. We have discussed nature, art, body, and seed and semen. Now let us descend to practice, how namely metals should be mixed, and what their correspondence is among themselves. Therefore, know that a woman does not differ from a man, from the same seed, and they are both born in one matrix. Nothing was lacking except digestion, and so that the matrix might be purer in blood and salt, thus the moon from the same female with the sun and the same matrix. But the matrix had more of water than of digested blood, according to the time of the celestial moon, so that you may more easily imagine how metals blend to emit and receive seed. Behold the spheres of the heavens and the planets. You see that Saturn is the highest, followed by Jupiter, then Mars, after him the Sun, then Venus, then Mercury. Lastly, the moon is placed. Consider now that the virtues of the planets do not ascend, but descend. This was also given by mal-experience itself, that from Venus Mars is not made, but from Mars Venus is made, as they are both spheres below. So also Jupiter is easily transformed into Mercury, because Jupiter is second from the firmament, and Mercury second from the earth. Saturn is first from the sky, the moon first from the earth. The sun mixes with all, but is never improved through inferior ones. But let it not escape you, there is a great correspondence between Saturn and the moon, among whom the sun is placed in the middle, just as between Jupiter and Mercury, among whom the sun is also placed in the middle. Likewise, between Mars and Venus, which two also have the sun in the middle. Alchemy knows this well. Iron can be changed into copper or Venus without the sun. Some even make Mercury from Jupiter. There are also those who make the moon from Saturn, but if they knew how to manage nature through these changes of the sun, surely they would find a treasure more precious than all. Therefore, I say, it must not be ignored which metals should be joined together, and whose nature corresponds to nature. Therefore, there is one metal given, which has the power to consume others. It is mostly made of water, and mostly mother. It unites only with the radical humid, namely of the sun and the moon, and resists it, and improves through it, but to reveal. It is called steel. If it combines 11 times with gold, it emits its own seed, and is weakened almost to death. Steel conceives, and begets a son brighter than the father. Then when the seed already born is placed in its matrix, it purges it and makes it 1,000 times more suitable for bearing the best fruits. There is also another steel, which is assimilated to this, created by nature itself, which knows how to elicit from the rays of the sun, with wonderful force and power, that which so many men have sought, and is the beginning of our work. TENTH Treatise on the supernatural generation of the Son of the Sun. We have discussed the things that nature creates and those that God has created, so that the investigators of the art might more easily understand the potential of nature. But lest I delay any longer, I proceed to the method and art of making the philosopher's stone. The philosopher's stone in its tincture is nothing other than gold digested to the highest degree, for common gold is like a plant without seed, when nature knows how to produce seed. Thus gold, when nature knows how, gives its seed, its tincture. But someone might ask, Why does gold or another metal not produce seed? The reason is such, because it cannot be mature due to the rawness of the air and does not have sufficient heat. And it happens in some places that pure gold is found, which nature intended to perfect, but was hindered by the raw air. For example, we see that in certain regions where the soil is native, apple and orange trees grow just like other trees in Italy and elsewhere. Where the soil is their native habitat, they bear fruit because they have sufficient warmth. But in colder places, they do not. Where they should ripen, they fail to do so because they are oppressed by the cold. And thus, in these places, nature never yields their fruit, although sometimes it helps nature with favor and ingenuity. Then art already accomplishes what nature could not. The same happens with metals. Gold can give fruit and seed, in which it multiplies by the industry of the astute craftsman who knows how to promote nature. But if nature wants to try it, it will fail. For not only in this art, but in every art, we can do nothing but assist nature, and this by no other means than fire or heat. But if this cannot be done, since no spirits appear in the frozen metallic body, it is necessary to dissolve the body first and open its pores so that nature can work. What kind of solution it should be, I want the reader to be warned here. There are two kinds of solution, although there are many other solutions, but IHA useless. Only one is true and natural. The second is violent, under which all others are included. The natural method is such that the pores of the body are open in our water, so that the digested seed is emitted and imposed on its matrix, but our water is celestial, not made by hands, not common, but heavenly. The body is of gold, which gives seed, our moon, not the silver of the common people, which receives the seed of gold. It is then governed by our continuous fire for 7 months, and sometimes 10, until our water consumes 3, and leaves 1, and this in duplicate. Then it is nourished by the milk of the earth, or its fatness, which grows in the earth's breasts, and is governed or preserved by the putrefaction of nature's salt. And thus, that infant of the second generation is generated. Now let us move from theory to practice. 11th treatise, on practice and the making of the stone, or TINCTURE, through art. Throughout the scattered chapters, the discourse is spread about things through examples, so that the practice that must be done by imitating nature in this way may be more easily understood. IAG of our stone through 11 degrees, 11 grains of our gold and not the common, 1 grain, of our moon, not the common, 2 grains, but be admonished. Do not take the gold and silver of the common people, for these are dead. Take ours which is alive. Then put it in our fire, and from there a dry liquid will be made. First, the earth will be dissolved in water, which is called the mercury of the philosophers, and that water dissolves those bodies of the sun and moon, and consumes them, so that only 1/10 remains with 1 part, and this will be the metallic radical moisture. Then also the water of saltpeter from our earth, in which is after this, place that radical moisture on it, and subject it to the fire of putrefaction and generation, not in such a way as you did in the first operation. Govern everything with great skill until colors appear, like the tail of a peacock. Regulate by digesting, and do not weary yourself until the colors cease, and a uniform green color appears throughout, and so on with the others. And when you see at the bottom ashes of a brown color, and the water almost red, open the vessel, make a feathered tool, apply something. If it dies, have water ready. After this, apply that radical moisture, and subject it to the fire of putrefaction and generation, not as before in the first operation. Govern everything with great skill, until colors appear, like the tail of a peacock. Regulate by digestion, and do not weary yourself, until the colors cease, and a uniform green color appears throughout, and so with the others. And when you see at the bottom ashes of a brown color, and the water almost red, open the vessel, make a feathered tool, apply something. If it dies, have water ready, about which there will be discussion later, and pour in only as much of that water as the raw air has entered. Cook again with the previous fire until it dies again. The vessel of my work should be made of iron, round in the first operation, in the second, somewhat less, like a glass vial or egg. But in all things, know that the fire of nature is unique. Whatever operates differently, the distance of places brings about. The vessel of nature is also unique, but we use 2 for the sake of brevity, 1 matter, but from 2 substances. Therefore, if you are inclined to create things, first consider created things, observing them with your eyes, if you cannot attain to these, much less the things you desire to produce. For you know that you can create nothing which is the sole property of God, but to make apparent the hidden things lurking in the shadow, and to remove the shadow from them. This is the philosophy of philosophers. Consider, I beseech you, the simple water of the cloud. Has anyone ever thought that it contains within itself all that the world possesses? Hard stones, salts, air, earth, fire, although water itself appears simple by itself. What shall I say about the earth, which contains within itself water, fire, salts, air, and appears bare by itself, O marvelous nature, which knows how to produce wondrous fruits from water into earth, and from air to supply them with life. These are all things, and the eyes of common people do not see them, but the eyes of intellect and imagination perceive them with the most true sight, for the eyes of the wise perceive nature. The wise perceive nature differently than common eyes. For example, the eyes of the common folk see the sun as warm, but the eyes of the philosophers, on the contrary, see the sun rather as cold, but its motion is warm, for its acts and effects are perceived through the distance of places. The fire of nature is one and the same with itself. For just as the sun is the center among the spheres of the planets, and from this center of the sky it spreads warmth downwards by its motion, so in the center of the earth is the sun of the earth, which by its perpetual motion drives warmth or rays upwards to the surface of the earth. This intrinsic warmth is much more effective than this elemental fire, but the earthly water is tempered, which from day to day on the earth penetrates the pores of the earth, and by this means it cools. Similarly, the celestial sun and the air, which surrounds the globe day by day, temper its warmth. And if this were not so, all things would be consumed by such heat, and nothing would grow. However, just as that invisible fire, or central heat, would consume everything if it were not for the intercession of water, so the heat of the sun would destroy everything without the intermediary of air. But how these elements interact with each other, I will explain briefly. In the center of the earth is the central sun, which by its motion, or the motion of its firmament, gives great heat, which extends to the surface of the earth. That heat causes the air. In this way, if the matrix of water is sharp, it gives birth to suns of its own nature but dissimilar and much subtler. For where the entrance of water is denied, air enters, and then afterward that central heat, which is perpetual, acts, causing water to distill and heat up, and thus that water, by the force of heat, turns into air, and in this way it bursts forth to the surface of the earth, because it does not tolerate being confined, where afterward it cools down. It resolves into water in opposite places. Meanwhile, it also happens that not only air, but also water emerges, as is evident when dark clouds are lifted up violently into the air. Let this domestic example illustrate this for you. When you make water boil in a pot, you will see with slow fire, slow vapors, and winds. With stronger fire, there will appear thicker clouds. In the same way, heat operates within, lifting subtle water into the air, which, when thickened by salt or moisture, is distributed to the earth, whence various things are born. Residuum rocks and stones remain. Someone might object, saying that if things were so, it should happen immediately, yet often no wind is felt. I respond, if water is not forcibly poured into a distillation vessel, no wind arises, for a small amount of water generates only a small wind. You see, thunder doesn't always occur, even if there is rain and wind, but only when the force of air carries turbid water to the sphere of fire. For fire does not tolerate water. You have before your eyes an example, when you pour cold water into a hot oven, hence thunder is aroused. But why does water not enter uniformly into those places and cavities? The reason is that there are many such vessels and places. Sometimes a concavity repels water from itself for several days and months, until again there is a repercussion of the water, as we see in the sea, whose tides sometimes move many miles before they encounter a counteraction, to recede. But to our matter, I say fire or heat is the cause of the movement of air, and the life of all things, and the earth is the nurturer or receptacle of all these. But if there is no water, which cools the earth and the air, our matter, then the earth would dry up, due to these two reasons, namely because of the central motion and the heat of the celestial sun. Nevertheless, it happens in some places when the pores of the earth are obstructed, so that moisture cannot penetrate, then by the correspondence of the celestial sun and the central heat, because they have a magnetic force between them, the earth is ignited by the sun, although sometimes by a heavy fall of the world's orbit. Therefore, let the operation in our earth be such that the central heat can transform water into air, so that it may emerge onto the surface of the earth, and the residue, as I said, may be spread through the pores of the earth, and then in the opposite manner, the air will be converted into a much finer water than it was originally. At least observe this. Do not mistake the cold for the hot, or the hot for the cold. Mix natures with natures, if there is anything contrary to nature. Since one thing is clearly necessary for you, separate it, so that nature may be similar to nature. Do this with fire, not with the hand. And know, if you do not follow nature, all is in vain. And here I have said to you by the holy God what the Father owes to the Son. Let he who has ears hear, and he who has understanding pay attention. Feach. Treatise 12, on the stone, and its power. In the preceding sections, sufficiently discussed were the production of natural things, of the elements, and of prime matter and secondary matter, of bodies and seeds, of their use and virtue. Also composed was the practice of making the philosopher's stone. However, about its power only, as much as nature has granted me, and experience has revealed, I will now disclose. But before that, briefly and succinctly, I will summarize all of these treatises, so that the reader, fearing God, may grasp my mind and my understanding, is as follows. On the truth of the art, if anyone doubts it, let them read the abundant writings of the most ancient philosophers, supported by reasoned argument and verified experience, to which, as trustworthy, faith in their art should not be diminished. But those who do not trust them, then against those denying the principles, one should not argue. For the deaf and mute cannot speak. I have spoken of the exalted art. For what prerogative in this world do all things have over metals? Why should this one alone, through the denial of seed, be unjustly deprived of the universal multiplication by the highest creator? We exclude, by the blessing of divine revelation, which the sacred scriptures affirm, that to all created things, from the moment of the world's creation, was given and imparted. But if they indeed have seed, who is so foolish as not to believe that in their own seed they can multiply? In its own nature, true is the art of alchemy. True also is nature, but rarely indeed is the artisan. One nature, one art, but many artisans. For what nature creates from the elements, it generates by the will of God, from the prime matter, which only God knows. Nature creates resilient things and multiplies them from the second matter, which the philosophers understand. Nothing in the world happens without the will of God and nature, for each element is in its own sphere, but one without the other. The earth element cannot exist without the other. One lives from the other, and yet they do not agree when joined together. But water is the most worthy of all elements because it is the mother of all the others. This is surmounted by the spirit of fire, causing the fire. The water becomes the prime matter, through the contest, namely, of fire with water, and thus the winds or vapors are generated, ready to freeze with the earth through the raw air, which from the beginning was separated from it. And this happens without cessation, in perpetual motion, because fire, if not aroused or heated, moves only through motion, which is easily seen in the work of a blacksmith, grinding iron with a file, which heats up as the motion becomes more intense, as if it had been heated by fire. Therefore, motion causes heat. Heat moves water, the movement of water. Fietch. Motion causes the air, the life of all living beings. Therefore, things grow in this manner, as I said above, from water, namely, for from its more subtle vapor, subtle and light things arise. From its oil, however, come heavier and more valuable things. But because nature is sometimes hindered from producing sweet things from it, the vapor fouls the foliage with its fattiness. They are stained and mixed with the earth in places. Therefore, experience has taught us to separate the pure from the impure. Therefore, if you wish nature to improve in action, dissolve the body you desire, and separate what has heterogeneous to nature, purify, join pure with pure, cooked with cooked, raw with raw. Motion causes the air, the life of all living beings. Therefore, things grow in this manner, as I said above, from water, namely, for from its more subtle vapor, subtle and light things arise. From its oil, however, come heavier and more valuable things. But because nature is sometimes hindered from producing sweet things from it, the vapor fouls the foliage with its fattiness. They are stained and mixed with the earth in places. Therefore, experience has taught us to separate the pure from the impure. Therefore, If you wish nature to improve in action, dissolve the body you desire, and separate what has heterogeneous to nature, purify, join pure with pure, cooked with cooked, raw with raw. Give to the raw, according to the needs of nature, not of matter. For know that central salt does not take more from the earth than it needs, whether it be pure or impure. However, water behaves differently with fat, for it is never obtained pure. Art purifies it through dual heat, and then joins it again. Epilogue or conclusion of these 12 treatises. I have written, dear reader, the preceding 12 treatises for the benefit of the children of art, so that before they apply their hand to the work, they have a knowledge of the operation of nature. How indeed, by operating in this manner, she produces things, lest without keys they enter the door and draw water from the sieve. For he labors in vain, who stretches out his hands to toil without the knowledge of nature, in this sacred and most true science. He wanders in the darkness of night, where the sun does not shine. He is in a dense shadow, where the moon does not appear. Nature has her own light, which is not visible to our eyes. Nature's shadow is a body to our eyes, but to whomsoever nature's light shines, immediately the mist is removed from his eyes, and without hindrance he can behold the point of our magnet corresponding to both centers of the rays, namely, the sun and the earth. For thus far nature's light penetrates and reveals the internal. For such an example is made for you. Let a 12-year-old boy be clothed in a uniform garment, and a girl of the same age. If they stand next to each other, no one will know which is male and which is female. For our eyes cannot penetrate, therefore our sight deceives us, and accepts false things as true. But when their garments are removed, so that they appear as nature formed them, each is easily recognized in their own gender. In a similar way, our intellect makes nature's shadow a shadow. For the naked body in man is the shadow of nature's seed. Just as the human body is covered with garments, so is human nature covered with the body, which there God reserved to be covered and uncovered. I could here discourse at length and philosophically on the dignity of man, his creation, and generation, but since such things are not appropriate in this place, they must be passed over in silence. I will speak only briefly about his life. Created man from the earth, he lives from the air. For hidden in the air is the nourishment of life, which we call water drawn from the night's dew, from days vaporized, whose invisible spirit is better than that of the whole earth. O holy and admirable nature, which does not allow the sons of learning to err, as you demonstrate daily in human life. Moreover, in these 12 treatises, I have brought forth so many natural reasons. I have presented these, so many natural reasons, in order that the reader, desiring and fearing God, may understand all those things which, with God's blessing upon my eyes, I have seen, done with my own hands, without any fraud of sophistry. For without light and knowledge of nature, it is impossible to attain this art, unless it happens to someone through a singular divine revelation, or through the secret demonstration of a friend. The matter is both cheap and most precious, which I have described several times, and now repeat. Again, 10 parts of air, 1 part of living gold or living silver, all these you must place in a vessel, and boil this air first so that it becomes water, and then not water. If you are ignorant of this, and do not know how to boil air, without any doubt you will err, since this is the material of the ancient philosophers. For you must accept that which is, but is not seen, until it pleases the artisan. It is the water of our dew, from which the salt of the philosopher's stone is extracted, by which all things grow and are nourished. Its matrix is the center of the sun or moon, both celestial and terrestrial. And to speak more plainly, our magnet is that which I have said to be steel in the preceding passages. Air generates the magnet, but the magnet generates or makes our air appear. I have revealed to you the sacred truth here. Pray to God that he may assist your endeavors. And thus, in this place, you will have the truest explanation of Hermes, stating that his father is the sun and his mother is the moon, and that this is the material of the ancient philosophers. For you must accept that which is, but is not seen, until it pleases the artisan. It is the water of our dew, from which the salt of the philosopher's stone is extracted, by which all things grow and are nourished. Its matrix is the center of the sun or moon, both celestial and terrestrial. And to speak more plainly, our magnet is that which I have said to be steel in the preceding passages. Air generates the magnet, but the magnet generates or makes our air appear. I have revealed to you the sacred truth here. Pray to God that he may assist your endeavors. And thus, In this place, you will have the truest explanation of Hermes, stating that his father is the sun and his mother is the moon, and that more slowly than others have achieved. For I have not done it from many books, but from my own manual labor and personal experience. Therefore, if either you do not understand or do not believe the truth, do not accuse my book, but accuse yourself, and believe that God does not wish to reveal this secret to you. Therefore, beseech him, and with repeated readings, peruse this booklet, especially the epilogue of these treatises, always considering the possibility of nature, the actions of the elements, and what is predominant in them, especially in the rarefaction of water or air, for thus the heavens and the whole world were created, as I wanted to signify to you as a father to a son. Do not be surprised that I have written so many treatises. It is not for my own sake, as I do not need books, but to warn many who labor in vain pursuits, not to expend their resources in vain. Indeed, all could have been condensed into very few lines, even words, but through reasoning and examples, I wanted to lead you to the understanding of nature, so that above all you would know what you should seek, whether the first or second matter. You also have nature revealed, and its light and shadow. Do not be troubled if contradictions sometimes occur in my treatises, as is customary with philosophers. You need them, if you understand. A rose is not found without thorns. Persevere diligently in what I have said above. G. How the four elements drip into the center of the earth, moistening it at its root, and how the central earthly sun, through its motion, produces and uplifts it to the surface of the earth. I also spoke of the celestial sun having correspondence with the central sun, for the celestial sun and moon have a peculiar power and virtue to drip through their rays onto the earth, for heat easily joins with heat, salt with salt, and just as the central sun has its sea and perceptible raw water, so too the celestial sun also has its sea and subtle and imperceptible water. On the surface of the earth, rays join with rays and produce flowers and everything. Therefore, when rain occurs, take from the air that vital force and unite it with the saltpeter of the earth, because the saltpeter of the earth is like calcined tartar, attracting air to itself, which air is resolved into water in it. Such a power of attraction has that saltpeter of the earth, which was also air, and is joined to the fatness of the earth. And the more abundant solar rays strike then, the greater the quantity of saltpeter becomes, and consequently, the greater the abundance of grain grows, and this happens from day to day. So much about the correspondence of things among themselves and the efficacy of the sun and moon, and of the stars. I wanted to show to those ignorant, for those who know do not need this instruction. Our subject revolves before the whole world in front of our eyes, lo, and is not recognized. O our heaven, O our water, O our mercury, O our saltpeter roaming in the sea of the world, O our vegetation, O our fixed and volatile sulfur, O our deadhead, or the dregs of our sea, water that does not wet the hands, without which no mortal can live, and without which nothing is born, and it is generated in the whole world. And these are the epithets of Hermes' little bird, which never rests. It is the cheapest. No one can do without it. And so you have a thing more precious than anything in the whole world, which I plainly say is nothing other than our Pontic water, which freezes in the sun and moon, and is extracted from the sun and moon's steel. Our Pontic water, by the philosophical art, in wondrous ways, through the prudent son of art. It was not my intention to publish this book here for the reasons mentioned in the preface. However, the desire to earn favor from those learned in liberal arts and philosophy overcame me, so that I might not offend the good-natured among those who know me, and at the same time show to those skilled in the art that I am their equal and companion, and seek their recognition. I do not doubt that many people of good conscience and will possess this gift of God secretly. Therefore, having been warned by my own example, and made more cautious and provident by my dangers, let them keep silence as a favor to Harpocrates, for whenever. Judge, I wanted to disclose myself to the magnates. I always fell into loss or danger with this writing. I reveal myself to the children of Hermes, and I lead the ignorant and erring into a fruitful and straight path. Let the heirs of knowledge believe that they will never find a better way to pursue than the one shown here. For I have spoken openly about everything, at least the extraction of our sal ammoniac or philosophical mercury from our Pontic water, and its proper use I have not revealed so openly, because I did not have further permission from the master of nature to speak. And only God should reveal this, who knows the hearts and minds of men, whom if one diligently prays, through repeated reading of this book, it will be able to open its understanding to you. As mentioned above, one vessel is sufficient from beginning to end, or at most 2 vessels. Continuous fire is also necessary in both operations, which is why the erring read tractates X and Xi. If you work on the third matter, you will achieve nothing. Those who work outside of our single salt, which is mercury, labor in herbs, animals, stones, and minerals, except for our sun and moon, which are covered by the sphere of Saturn. And whoever desires the desired end should know the conversion of the elements to make the heavy light, and the spirit to make not spirit, then they will not labor in. JH. Foreign matters, fire is the ruler, whatever exists, is made by fire, as has been sufficiently stated in the preceding and also in this concluding passage. Farewell, kind reader, and having verified these labors through my own experience, long enjoy to the glory of the divine name, the salvation of your soul, and the benefit of your neighbors. Of the same author, to the sons of truth, the philosophical enigma, I have revealed to you, sons of knowledge, from the universal source, all things, so that nothing may remain. For in my preceding treatises, I have sufficiently explained nature through examples. The theory and practice, as far as permitted, I have made manifest. But lest anyone complain of brevity, that I have omitted something, I will now describe the entire art enigmatically to you, so that you may see how I have arrived, guided by God's direction. Infinite are the books. The treatises on this art scarcely find the eternal truth revealed to you, which for this reason I have sought to provide, because with many who believe they understand the writings of philosophers well, I have held discourse. But I have found them to explain the same writings far more subtly than nature, which is simple, requires. Indeed, all my true statements seemed always too trivial and incredible to those esteemed wise. Sometimes it happened that I would impart the art word for word to some, but they could by no means grasp it, not believing that there is water in our sea, and yet they wished to appear as philosophers. Therefore, since my spoken words could not be understood, I am not afraid, as other philosophers feared. Whether anyone could conceive it so easily, I say it is a gift from God. Indeed, it is true that a subtle ingenuity of mind is required in the pursuit of the chemical art, and such things should be suitable to be seen by the eyes of the common people. I have seen minds apt enough to inquire into such matters, but I tell you, be simple and not too wise until you find the secret, for with it, prudence will necessarily come. Then you will not lack the ability to write countless books, which will be far easier for the one who is at the center and sees the matter than for this one who walks on the circumference and has nothing but hearsay. You have the second matter of all things described most clearly, but I commend this to you for caution. If you desire to attain this secret, know that first and foremost, God should be prayed to, and then your neighbor loved. Finally, do not imagine for yourselves things so subtle of which nature knows nothing, but remain, I say, on the path of simple nature, for in simplicity, you will touch the matter more quickly than you will see the same in subtlety. Do not always stick to the syllables in reading my writings, but always consider nature and its possibilities in reading. Before you engage in the work, imagine diligently what you seek and what the aim and end of your intention are. For it is much better to learn first with the brain and imagination than to engage, and this I say to you, that it is necessary to seek some hidden thing, from which, in a wondrous manner, such moisture arises, which dissolves gold without violence or noise, indeed, so gently and naturally, just as ice melts by the warmth of water. If you have found this, you have the substance from which gold is produced by nature, and although all metals and all things have their origin from it, nothing adheres to it so much as gold, for impurity clings to other things, but to gold none. Therefore, it is like a mother to it. And so, finally, I conclude, if you do not wish to be cautious with these writings and admonitions of mine, consider me as desiring to merit well of you. Therefore, I have excused myself faithfully as much as was allowed, as befits a man of good conscience. If you inquire who I am a citizen of the world. If you know me and desire me to be a good and honest man, you will remain silent. If you do not know me, do not inquire about me, for no mortal, as long as I live, will be revealed more by me than what has been done in this public writing. Believe me, if I were not of such a state and condition of man as I am, there would be nothing more enjoyable to me than a solitary life, or to delight with Diogenes under a tub. For I see that all things are vanity, that fraud and greed have prevailed, where all things are for sale, and injustice has surpassed virtue. The better things of the future life are before my eyes. I see with these eyes, I rejoice in these. Now I no longer wonder, as I did before, why philosophers, considering such medicine, did not seek to shorten their days, for the life to come is always before the eyes of every philosopher, just as your own face appears in the mirror. And if God grants you the desired end, then you will believe me, and you will not reveal yourself to the world. Followed by a parable or philosophical enigma, added in place of the crown and supplement. There came a time, after so many years of my life spent sailing from the Arctic Pole to the Antarctic Pole, that by the singular will of God I might be cast upon the shore of a certain great sea. And although I had the best knowledge and experience of the access and properties of that world of the sea, nevertheless, I was unaware whether that little fish, the Echinus, was generated in those shores, which so many people of great and small condition have sought so diligently thus far. But as I gaze upon the floating Melicinas here and there with the nymphs on the shore, relieved also from previous labors and various thoughts, I am seized by sleep from the murmuring of the waters. And as I gently doze off, a marvelous vision comes to me in dreams. I see emerging from our sea, a venerable old age of the sea, Neptune, emerges with his trident, who after a friendly greeting leads me to a most delightful island. This island was situated towards the south and was filled with all things pertaining to human necessity and delight. The Elysian fields of Virgil could scarcely be compared with it. The entire shore of the island was surrounded by verdant myrtles, cypresses, and rosemary. Green meadows covered with a variety of flowers, a most delightful sight, exuded the sweetest fragrance. Hills adorned with vineyards, olive groves, and cedar trees in a marvelous manner. Groves filled with orange and lemon trees, public roads lined with laurels. And the granary with trees interwoven with exceptional craftsmanship on either side, provided the most pleasant shade to travelers. To put it briefly, whatever exists in the whole world seemed to be there. While walking, Neptune showed me, hidden under some rock, 2 mines of that island, gold and steel. Not far from there, I was led to a meadow, in which a particular garden was planted with various trees, worthy of observation. Among the many trees, however, he showed me 7 trees marked with names, and among these 2 principal ones stood out as more prominent than the others, one of which bore fruit resembling the most bright and shining sun, and to me, and its leaves were like gold. The other indeed produced very white fruits, whiter than lilies, and its leaves were like fine silver. These trees were called by Neptune one the solar tree, and the other the lunar. And although on this his land all things were at command, only one thing was lacking. Water was not to be had, except with great difficulty. Indeed, there were many who partly attempted to lead the water of the spring through channels, partly even extracted it from various things. But the attempt was in vain, because in that place it could not be obtained by any means, and hence it was collected. Yet it was in vain and poisonous, unless from the rays of the sun or from the moon, which few could provide, and those who in this undertaking had good fortune propitious, he could never draw more than 10 parts, for it was such a wonderful water, and believe me, that with my own eyes I have seen and touched the snow-white brightness of that water, and while I was contemplating that water, I was greatly amazed. Meanwhile, tired by that consideration, Neptune vanished from my eyes, and there appeared to me a great man, whose forehead had the name of Saturn engraved. This man, taking a vessel, drew 10 parts of water, and immediately took from the fruit of the solar tree and placed it upon the water. And I saw the fruit of the tree consumed amp, dissolved like ice in warm water, which scarcely from that, Lord, I would have seen the wonderful water to be almost fruits from the tree in it, consumed by such a sweet warmth. What is the reason for this? He graciously replied to me, My son, it is true that this thing is marvelous, but do not wonder, for it must be so. For this water is the water of life, having the power to so greatly improve the fruit of this tree that afterward, not by planting or grafting, but by its own scent alone, it makes itself like the other 6 trees. Furthermore, this water is like a woman to this fruit, for the fruits of this tree cannot rot in any other water. And although the fruit itself is marvelous and precious, yet if it putrefies in this water, it generates from this putrefaction a salamander in enduring fire. I asked him, Lord, how does this happen? He said to you, The fruit of the solar tree is alive, sweet, but when at least one of them is saturated, when it is cooked in this water, I can afterwards be satisfied with 1,000 from it. Furthermore, I asked, Lord, is it cooked with strong fire, and when? But he replied, this water has an intrinsic fire, and if it is assisted by continuous heat, it burns 3 parts of its body with this body of fruit, and nothing will remain except the tiniest part, which can hardly be imagined, but in the highest potency. I asked, Lord, can this fruit also be cooked in other waters, or can something foreign be added to it? He replied, there is only this one water that is useful in this region or island. No other water can penetrate the pores of this fruit except this one. And know that the solar tree also originated from this water, which is extracted from the rays of the sun or moon by the power of the magnet. Therefore, they have a great harmony between them, but if something foreign were added to the simple one, it could not do what it does by itself. Leave it. Yaijai asked further, Lord, is this water drawn in any other way, or is it obtained everywhere? And he said, it is everywhere, and no one can live without it. It is drawn in marvelous ways, but this is the best, which is extracted by the power of our steel, which is found in the sign of Aries. I said, what is it useful for? He replied, before the proper cooking, it is the highest poison, but after suitable cooking, it is the highest medicine, and it gives 29 grains of blood. But any grain of 864 suffice for the fruits of the solar tree. I inquired, can it be further improved? According to the philosophical scripture, he said, first to 10, then to 100, then to 1,000 and 10,000, etc. It can be raised. I persisted, my lord, is this water known to many? And does it have a proper name? He exclaimed openly, saying, few know, but all have seen, and see, and love it. It has many and varied names, but its proper name is the water of our sea, the water of life not wetting by hand. I asked again, do others use it for other things? All creatures use it, he said, but invisibly. Does it give birth? I asked. Does anything arise from it? He answered, from it all things in the world come forth, and in it they live. But properly speaking, there is nothing in it, but it is a thing that mixes with everything. I asked, is it useful without the fruit of this tree? Still, he said, in this work, not at all. Indeed, it is only improved by the fruit of this solar tree alone. I began to ask again, Lord, please give me the names in such a manifest way that I can have no further doubt. But he shouted so loudly that it woke me from my sleep, so I could no longer ask, nor did he want to answer me further, nor can I tell you more. Be content with these, and believe that it is not possible. For if you do not perceive these things, you will never attain the works of other philosophers. After the command of Saturn and his sudden departure, a new sleep overcame me, and Neptune appeared to me again in visible form. He congratulated me on the happiness of being present in the gardens of the Hesperides, showing me a mirror in which I saw all of nature revealed. After various exchanges of conversation, I thanked him for the benefits bestowed upon me, that by his guidance, not only had I entered this most delightful garden, but also had come into the much desired conversation with Saturn. But because of the unexpected departure of Saturn, some difficulties arose that needed to be addressed, and still there were some difficulties remaining to be sought and investigated. I earnestly asked him to remove this scruple for me on this long-awaited occasion. With these words, I address him. Sir, I have read books of philosophers affirming that all generation occurs through male and female, yet I have seen only the fruit of the solar tree in my dreams. I believe Saturn to be our Mercury, and I also believe that you, as Lord of the Sea, know these matters well. Please answer my question. And he replied, it is true, my son, all generation occurs in male and female, but due to the distinction of the 3 kingdoms of nature, animals are born in one way, and worms in another. For although worms have eyes, sight, and hearing, and other senses, nevertheless, they are produced through putrefaction, and their place or earth in which they putrefy is the female. Thus, in the philosophical work, the mother of this matter is repeated so often that your water and whatever is born from it, in the manner of worms, is born through putrefaction. Therefore, the philosophers called it the phoenix and the salamander. For if it were to be conceived from the union of 2 bodies, it would be subject to death. But because it only revives itself after the destruction of the previous body, it emerges as another incorruptible. Indeed, the death of things is nothing other than the separation of one from the other. And in this phoenix, it happens in such a way that life separates itself from the corruptible body. Moreover, I asked, Sir, are there diverse things or composition in this work? But he said, there is one essence, to which nothing else is mixed except the philosophical water which has been revealed to you several times in dreams, which ought to be tenfold in comparison to one part of the body. And you must firmly and without doubt believe, my son, that which in dreams on this island, according to the custom of the region, had been revealed to you by me and by Saturn. In no way are they dreams, but the purest truth, which experience, the unique teacher of things, with the assistance of God, will be able to reveal to you. Further inquiring without an answer, departing after saying goodbye, left me awakened from sleep, thrust into the desired region of utopia it ends. And so to you also, dear reader, let what has been said by me so far suffice. Farewell. Praise and glory to the Triune Son.